Hello, and welcome back to the Michigan State University Wealth Management Association podcast. This week we have Mark Meyers and Ryan Sullivan joining us on the podcast. Listen in to this two-part series as they share about trust services. We hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome back to the Michigan State University Wealth Management podcast. My name is Jacob Swartz, and this week we have Mark and Ryan here to join us. Now I'll let you guys kind of introduce yourselves.
Excellent. Thanks, Jacob. We're excited to be here. Thanks for having us. Ryan Sullivan here. I'm a partner at Rehmann. I've been here for 23 years now. Started out as a financial advisor coming out of Michigan State, focused on comprehensive financial planning. My current role is that of the Chief Executive Officer of Rehmann Capital Advisory Group.
So my name is Mark Meyers, principal in the wealth management practice. Ryan's got me beat on the time frame. I've only been with the firm for about 3.5 years. Co-lead the ultra high net worth practice along with my partner, Dave Latimer. Along the way, had some varied experiences. So graduated from Central Michigan back in 2007. Not ideal with 2008 being the Great Recession starting point. So that was an interesting path. From there, Northwestern Mutual, Plant Moran, Clarfeld, and then Greenleaf Trust, and then Rehmann. So
very cool.
Far and wide.
Yeah, I know everybody always has their own path of getting into the field, but I think it's more important about where you end up and kind of the legacy you leave behind. And it seems like so far you guys are on the right track for that.
Thanks, Jacob.
But yeah. So diving in, our first topic I'm going to cover with you guys. This is kind of a two-part episode, so we'll have this one coming out, and it's going to be covering trust services here. So for those trust services, I wanted to cover for listeners who aren't familiar, what exactly is a trust? And how does it differ from just having a will or a general estate plan?
Yeah, I'll dive in on this one. And Ryan, of course, feel free to chime in with any thoughts. But, when I think about the difference between a will and a trust, right? There's similarities. A lot of it is about directing what happens upon your passing. What do those dispositive provisions look like for your kids, for your grandkids, for a surviving spouse, that sort of thing. But a key distinction is when you're thinking about a will versus trust is whether or not it's going to go through the probate system. Trust avoids that. It's private. And there is some additional abilities beyond a will related to different tax mechanisms. So a trust really is one of those things, if you're thinking about a spectrum of estate planning, it's further down the road from the will, from beneficiary designations, but it plays a big role for some of those high net worth families.
Yeah, and you briefly touched on the tax aspect of that. Why do so many high net worth families choose to place their assets and all that in trusts?
It's a great question. And following up on Mark's response to the initial question, there's a couple of key components we tend to see from a planning standpoint, right? It all starts with what are the intentions? What do the family members want to see as outcomes, both now and later, if it's this generation or generations into the future. So you look at some of those benefits are, good sound estate planning can help you minimize or avoid estate and gift taxes, which are generally pretty significant for most. Additionally, it allows for you to control distributions of your estate, both now and for generations to come after you're no longer here. And then a third typical component and reason for why we see this type of planning done is for asset protection, both today from lawsuits for creditors, life events like divorce, both in this generation as well as generations going forward. So again, from an asset protection standpoint, that tends to also be a pretty key component and benefit of sound estate planning, leveraging trust or trust services.
Very cool. Yeah, and what role does that trustee kind of play on how families decide whether to appoint a family member, have a professional trustee, or somebody like you guys kind of stepping in for that?
Yeah, it's far and wide. I've heard a lot of these folks say it's almost better to have a psychology degree than a finance degree. But when it comes to that, right, what is their goal? Their goal is to administer the trust under the terms that are already written down and provided, right? So that really is one of the key components in determining who it is that should serve. If, as an example, you've got differing treatment for different family members, and then you were thinking about having a family member serve as that trustee, a lot of times we say, think about the Thanksgiving table. Imagine that you've got somebody who's treated differently than another person at that table, And then you've got the trustee sitting there as well. Hey, I just asked this person for a distribution. It's under the discretionary provisions. One person got yes, one person got no, and please pass the gravy. That can be tricky. And so from our perspective, that's going to be a big reason why you would look to somebody like maybe an independent professional trustee, attorney, CPA, professional corporation, bank. I mean, there's all sorts of avenues towards making sure you've got the right people in the right place. And hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. So you don't want to maybe be as close to the people that are going to be saying yes or no to really some big financial decisions you might be trying to make.
And let alone the financial sophistication involved in getting to the right point where you're meeting all the criteria, right? Are you sending out the beneficiary notices that may be required? That's important. Do you know how to do the basic accounting for the trust itself? That sounds simple, but trust can hold all kinds of things. Liquid investment assets are easy enough if they're publicly traded. What if it owns real estate? What if it owns shares in a closely held business? These things aren't so easy. And then making sure that it's administered properly. Somebody took the time to think about and write down exactly what they want to have happen and how it should happen. And this is nothing against Uncle Bob, but if Uncle Bob doesn't have that sophistication, he could try his best and still make mistakes. And that's not to say that family members shouldn't be involved. It's just to say you got to really think about what's being provided for, and that'll help guide you to the right decision on who should be in that role.
Yeah. And what are some of the benefits if you are somebody's trustee?
Yeah. So, the interesting thing is, to Ryan's point, creditor protection is a big reason why a lot of this is being done. So if you've got an independent professional trustee and there's an avenue towards a distribution for best interest, if that person was their own trustee, they may be more restricted under what it is that they could distribute those assets for without having all of the value of the irrevocable trust included in their estate. Now, that may or may not be an important thing for that person, but just thinking about the benefits, where you've got creditor protection, you might have estate tax minimization benefits. And then, of course, if you've got an independent person involved, well, that can be hugely beneficial because now you don't have to worry about the Thanksgiving table environment.
Yeah. Okay. Very good to know. And you talked about, some of the risks, I guess, of having a family member or somebody like that manage your trust. What are some of the common mistakes that you see people making when setting up a trust and kind of working with an experienced advisor through that process?
We tend to see,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Mark. What we tend to see is maybe starting with the outcome, right? So thinking more of, I need a trust rather than starting with proper planning. And then the ultimate is, so if you don't, it's a delay to start, right? The process. And then the next stop is, once you've started and you've implemented a proper estate plan, it's then looking at a regular review and a reevaluation of your trust and how it's set up. And so there's so many moving parts when you do it right. Often life changes, circumstance change, and you think about the Thanksgiving, table and family dynamics. Those often change, and it's often healthy to review and reevaluate how your trust is set up, and does it still align with your current goals and circumstance.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I'll just I guess I'll tag along on this one and say, we think about how things are under the current laws, and trusts, in a lot of instances, are intended to be around for a very long time. And so it's not as much of an issue now, but older documents in particular, you see a lot of them written for a time and a place that maybe doesn't exist as much anymore. And so you're looking at, how do we maximize maybe income tax benefits versus estate tax minimization benefits? And that could be a mistake. Thinking too much about it right now and not enough about where things could go.
Yeah. So oftentimes it's important also, once you have your trust, to continue to update it, check back in on it, and make sure everything's up to date.
100%. And not just your trust, wills, powers of attorney, all of those things play a big role. I've got 3 young kids. Guardianship is a topic of conversation at all times. And so just making sure that you've got all those details nailed and you revisit them with some regularity, really important.
Very cool. Good to know. And kind of diving into our last major question on this trust topic is, how do trust services fit into the broader wealth management aspect of this field?
Great question. And as we'd mentioned prior, often you'll hear from folks who think, okay, I need a will or I need a trust, and they kind of focus on the acute solution. And trust services or trusts are just a mechanism to help accomplish goals, right? So it really is a mechanism or a tool in your toolbox to help execute on a broader set of financial planning or estate planning goals. And so it's really just like any other solution. It should be an outcome and a tactic to accomplish your goals, values, and desires, and not necessarily what you lead with. But again, it can be very effective as long as it aligns with what your outcomes are desired to be.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, Mark, I really appreciate you guys coming on. Make sure all the audience comes back next week to enjoy your second part where you're going to cover some estate planning more for us.
Thanks, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care, Jacob.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this discussion, please like and share the podcast on Apple and Spotify. The WMA podcast is part of Michigan State University's Wealth Management Association, a student organization whose goal is to inspire the next generation of financial advisors. Feel free to follow us on social media at MSU WMA and check out our website at msuwma.com. Anything heard on either the MSU WMA or Spartan Journal podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice.